Hello, Stephen Lambdin. Welcome to Taekwondo Passion. Thanks for accepting the interview. How are you?
Hey man, I'm doing really good. Thank you for having me.
Great, excellent. Well, to start with an introduction, can you tell us, for people who don't know you, who is Stephen Lambdin?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm a 2016 Olympian for Team USA in the over 80 kilogram division. Been on about 1 billion U.S. national teams, a couple of world university or a couple of university or world university championship medals, 6-time Pan American medalist, Pan Am Games bronze medalist. Pretty much been around the block for a while.
Amazing. And with this quarantine, with this COVID thing, what are you doing now?
Yeah, so it's been a little bit of an adjustment. Fortunately, I lift weights at home already. I already did that beforehand, so that wasn't a big adjustment. And the first, 5 or 6 months, pretty much kicking by myself. But on the bright side, I have a key to the gym that I train at, and so me and just a very very small group of people train early in the morning before anybody's there, and then the gym gets disinfected. So we're taking precautions, but it's slowly getting back to normal.
Amazing. Yeah, I think everyone started the same, just training home, and
Yeah,
slowly they're moving to train with precautions, but with other people.
yeah, it's taken forever.
Excellent. Well, I want to know, before Taekwondo, what kind of child were you? How was your family? And how they and you decided that you start to take Taekwondo classes?
Yeah, as a kid, I started on my sixth birthday. I started because I wanted to be a Ninja Turtle, and um, we were eating lunch for my birthday, and there was at the time I said I wanted to do karate, but there was a Taekwondo gym across the street, and at the time we didn't know the difference: Taekwondo, karate, jujitsu, whatever. My parents took me over, signed me up, thinking that I'd be done in a month, like I'd get tired of it, and I think to their and my surprise, I obviously stuck with it. But one of the things I always like to point out to anybody starting is, at the time I was a chubby little kid that couldn't sit still, and so it's like Taekwondo's done a lot for me as far as um, where I started to where I am today. And so I always tell people, if that chubby little kid could do what I did, then pretty much anybody can do it as long as they just don't quit.
Amazing. And being that a small child, did you enjoy Taekwondo? Do you remember your first class?
Don't remember my first class, but yeah, I definitely enjoyed doing it, to the point that I was that little kid that wanted to go to class even whenever he was sick. Like, my parents would have to basically force me to stay home and say, no, 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 we're not going to drive you. You're too sick. And It's one of those. I don't remember my first class, but I remember my first tournament. And at my first tournament, I started crying really bad because I didn't want to go down and compete. And I just remember my mom having the conversation with me where she just said, "Hey, you don't have to do this. Like, we don't care. This is entirely up to you." And it was like, the second she did that, a light switch flipped, and it was like, "Oh, okay, this is my choice. I don't have to do it." And it was off to the races at that point. So it was definitely very supportive in my house.
Amazing. That's great. And why did you enjoy of Taekwondo on those days as a child?
I mean, like I said, at the time, whether it was a Ninja Turtle or Batman or a ninja, it was every little kid wants to play pretend and act out being a superhero or whoever. And it's like, at the end of the day, a 6-year-old getting to punch, kick, and hit things, I don't think it gets much better for a little 6-year-old. So definitely acting things out.
Great. How you started to get involved in Taekwondo competition?
Oh, how did I start?
Yeah.
Well, I started sparring in practice with like the competition team, and it was one of those. I wouldn't say I was a natural by any stretch. Like, there were a lot of people that were significantly better than me, but It was one of the things that I enjoyed the most, to the point that I didn't like doing poomsae or anything like that. I just wanted to do the sparring class, and um, it 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 was an easy progression for me, because the school that I started at is currently is the same school that my current coach coaches at, and so it's I just happened to luck out and find a decent gym. A lot of people will start Taekwondo and go to some middle of nowhere gym, which, hey, that's great. Start where you can, absolutely, but I lucked out and found a world-class coach like right from the start.
Amazing. And you've been with him all your athletic life?
Not the whole time. I went for university out in Los Angeles, and so I trained under a coach named Scott Fuji. And then after that, I trained in Oklahoma with a guy named Jason Poos, who was my coach at the 2016 Olympics. And then after 2016, I moved home back to Dallas.
Great. But the United States team don't have a city with the team concentrated the whole time, right?
So
Yeah.
they didn't for a long time, but they're slowly developing that now. It's called the High Performance Training Center in Colorado Springs. They started it year before last, and it's slowly starting to all move that way. So they're building it.
And that will be compulsory for athletes to train there, or you can train with your coach in your state, or?
Not compulsory at this point. Maybe in the future. I don't know what their plans are.
Okay, amazing. And so you started with a great competition coach since the start. How was your first national competitions? And some athletes at first have certain problems. You don't do great at first. How was that progression for you?
So I would win all my tournaments all year, and no problem. When I would go to nationals, I'd lose my first match, to the point that I lost my first match for the first 7 years. So 7 years winning tournaments constantly, and then going to nationals and losing my first match. It was really rough, to the point that even my parents were saying, hey, maybe this isn't for you. Maybe play golf. Maybe take up tennis, something else. But I always tell people it was one of those things. I was really passionate about it, and you don't have to be amazing at what you're passionate about. It's one of those things. I think it's a little bit of a fallacy that people say, like, oh, find whatever you're passionate about and make a career out of it. And it's like, no, that's not true at all. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of people that are very passionate about Taekwondo that do it recreationally, and that's great. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. And so it's one of those, I believe I would have kept doing it regardless of success at nationals. And I like to think that I always thought I was going to do well and do better. I never thought I would do as well as I have done. Like, I always wanted to go to the Olympics, but I can't say that I ever, as a little kid, believed it was going to happen, just because I couldn't even win my first match at nationals. But after that 7th year, when I finally won a match, I went on to win the 2nd and 3rd and 4th. And before I knew it, I'd won 6 matches, and I'd made the junior national team. And so it was kind of a waterfall, in that I had a lot of trouble at the start, but once everything broke free, it was smooth sailing, so to speak.
Great. I saw in a video or in an interview with you that when you were a child, you already were saying that you wanted to go to the Olympics. That was a thing that maybe your Taekwondo school promoted, or was a thing of you?
Yeah, they definitely promoted it, because, for example, my coach was made it into the '88 Olympic team trials, and so, like, they were very aware of the process, everything like that. The competition team was very much geared towards making a national team, eventually, hopefully, going to world championships, the Olympics, everything like that. So the competition team that I started with was always very competitive.
Great. And do you consider that making junior national team, like a tipping point to start focusing, thinking big, or did you have any other tipping breaking point?
Well, what's funny about it is when I won nationals and made the junior team, I didn't even know there was a junior team. So I won my final match. I'm happy about the gold medal, and my coach, I go over to hug my coach. My coach says, "Hey, you get to go to Greece in 3 months for the Junior World Championships." And I kind of went, "Oh, okay." Like I didn't even know that was a thing. Like, all right, yeah, awesome. And so I definitely knew because I remember having the conversation with my parents at the time that things were different. Like something special had happened. I didn't really at the time, and my parents included, we didn't really have an understanding of how big it could potentially get. But it's just like a little kid. I wanted to go to the Olympics, but I had no idea how to do it. It was just one of those things. I would watch the Olympics on TV every 2 years, whether it's winter or summer, and go, man, I really want to go to the Olympics in Taekwondo, but like a lot of people had no idea how to do it. And so making that first junior team, again, like I said, was kind of a waterfall moment in that it just kept getting bigger and bigger from there. There were definitely hiccups along the way, absolutely, like tearing my Achilles tendon and stuff like that. But it just became one of those things. Yeah, that was probably a big tipping point in my career, for sure, absolutely.
Great. And how was that first? That was your first experience outside the States representing your country?
Yeah.
How was it?
It was horrible. So Greece was amazing. I loved the trip, absolutely. But I had just turned 14, so I was on the younger side of the team. I was really awkward, goofy. Aside from one or two people on the team liked me, and it's, in fairness, they're all about to be 18. I'm just turning 14. It was just it's that age range can be such a weird mix of maturity levels. And so I had a bad experience with that. Then I at the tournament, I went in just with no concept of the level of competition, and no concept that it was even a possibility that I could lose. I just thought, oh, well, I won nationals, so I'm just going to win this. And I drew a Korean, someone from Korea first, and not only did he just destroy me, he destroyed everybody in the division. Like nobody that whole day touched him. He just annihilated everybody. And I remember at the time afterwards, even my coach from home, like watching and going, "Oh man, I don't think I could have beat him. Like he's really good." And so I would make an argument that I had the worst draw in the entire tournament. I got a really bad concussion. He ended up beating me like 25-1, and they stopped it before the third round. I mean, he just annihilated me. And so most people I would think would take that and go, okay, I think I'm done. Like, I'm good. No, thank you. But if anything, as a kid, like a typical teenager, it just made me mad. And so I went home and just started training really, really hard because, like I said, I didn't understand the competition level till I got there. And it was like, by the time I got home, both my coach and myself had kind of taken this new mentality of, oh, we have to do things completely different if we want to be successful at that level. And so it was, I'm grateful for the experience in that probably dictated more about my athletic career than anything. But, ooh, man, it was, I got beat up real bad that tournament, both in the ring and out of the ring. So.
And why do you think you didn't, in that particular moment, what did you have in your character that made you continue and not giving up?
Yeah, a great question. I've always been the type of person that if you tell me I can't do something, it's going to make me want to do it more. And the best example I can give is after I lost that fight to Korea, the coach, one of the national team coaches, told me that it would be a, quote, cold day in hell before I ever made the Olympic team. And so I remember that, like, to this day, that still motivates me. Like, thinking about it makes me want to go out and train again. And it's like, one of the things I tell people is, like, that was the quote that always motivated me. But in 2016, before the Olympic qualifier in Aguascalientes, for the first time, and it was like 33 or 34 years, the day before my competition, it snowed there. And so it was one of those things. I always found it interesting and ironic that the quote that motivated me the most was like, it would be a cold day in hell till before I made the Olympics, and then it snowed. So it was like the second it
Wow.
snowed, I knew that day I was like, I'm gonna make this Olympic team. And so yeah, definitely definitely motivated by people telling me that I can't do something.
Do you think sometimes people level sports or combat sports like Taekwondo are hard and rough, but do you think sometimes people can confuse it with something with, I don't know, bad education or treating other human beings bad?
Yeah, for sure. I've definitely heard that argument for sure. But it's one of those things. I don't think it's rooted in a misunderstanding of the sport. In that, true, yes, absolutely. Taekwondo could be used for self-defense. Absolutely. And it could also be used improperly. Like somebody could use it in a bad way. Absolutely. But a true practitioner of the sport, I think, first of all, priority is always going to be avoiding a fight. Like, why would you, especially when you have an understanding of what you're capable of, like, people get hurt wearing full gear. To get into a fight where somebody's wearing no gear is just crazy dangerous. And on top of it, knowing how easy accidents happen, even in competition, the thought of actually like getting into a fight or something like that and being overly aggressive outside the sport, no way. Like, it's too easy to get a concussion. It's too easy to hurt your knee and changes your life forever. And so, again, I think that argument's definitely rooted in a misunderstanding of what the actual intent of the sport is, which are things like building self-confidence, discipline, dedication, like essentially all the tenets of Taekwondo. Yeah, I suppose it is entirely possible, and I'm sure it's happened that people can use it inappropriately and come from that kind of mentality. But those people don't tend to last too long in the sport because the sport itself weeds those people out, fortunately.
Great, amazing. After that, that first Junior World Championships experience, what big thing came from you that motivated to continue and to continue with your career?
Yeah. So in 2004, if we jump forward a little bit, I went back to Junior World Championships and ended up taking a bronze medal. And that ended up being a really big spot, obviously, and definitely motivated me to keep going. But the next big tipping point is probably I was about to turn 18. And yeah, I was about to turn 18, and I managed to somehow win the senior U.S. championships in heavyweight. Asked me to this day, like, should never have happened. Like, I had a good draw for sure, but like, for example, my final match. This was back whenever we would do 3 3-minute rounds instead of 2-minute rounds, so just brutal. But like, for example, my final match that year at nationals, I won in Golden Point, 24-23, and so it was just a beat down. And I went on to that first year. I went to team trials again, thinking like, oh, I won senior nationals. I'm gonna win this, no problem. And it was like, our team trials then were round robin, so you had to fight everyone. And there were 5 people total in my bracket, and I went 0-5. I won no matches at team trials that year, and it was the same thing like the first Junior Worlds, that it made me go, oh man, I have to completely change how I'm training. I've got to take this way more serious. And I ended up coming back the next team trials. I was the number 2 seed, so I had to win twice somehow. Ended up on my 18th birthday, ended up somehow winning twice and making my first senior team. And it was like, it was a very similar experience in that stepping into a much larger pond or lake. I had no idea what was coming, but that was another one of those moments that I remember having the conversation with my parents of like, oh man, now obviously I knew a little bit more about making it to the Olympics. And that's when it kind of became oh, this could actually happen one day. I didn't know how much further I was going to have to go, but it's still that moment of, oh, this is actually possible. You know, it's easy to dream of owning a yacht made of 24 karat gold, but like at some point, unless you actually know it's possible, it's a different ball game. And so that was probably the next big moment in my career for sure.
Excellent. And after it, I think that you, for Rio Olympics, you were already working, right?
Like training or working?
No, not working with a job, with a normal job.
Oh,
You
yeah.
had a normal job.
Yeah. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
Yeah. How was that decision making to leave a job on the Olympics with us, all the process before the Olympics and the day of the competition?
Yeah, so I got hired to General Electric in their transportation division as an intern through a Team USA career program, and the program was only supposed to last 6 months, and it was just supposed to essentially help pay athletes, get athletes funding for trips and stuff like that. It was definitely work, but it was easier for sure. And what I did in that 6 months is I kind of ingrained myself in the company. Like I just kept taking on so many responsibilities because I knew if I took on enough responsibility that they wouldn't be able to let me go very easy without just slamming another employee with a ton of work. And so after that 6 months, I ended up getting hired as a full-time employee. And so for about 3 years in that Olympic quad, I was getting up every day at 3:30 in the morning for a telephone call that I had to be on, and then at the after that call, I would go do my first workout. Then I would go to work, and when I got off work at 5 p.m., then I would go do my next workout. And so it was just 3 years of a brutal schedule. And towards the end, it had just started to take a toll on me. Like my performance wasn't as good. I wasn't doing well at my job or in Taekwondo. And so I had the conversation with my parents where my parents just said, look, you're so close to the Olympics. Like, quit the job. We'll support you through the Olympics. Like, just, you can get another job. You can't do the Olympics again when you're 50. And so, all right, it was a really hard decision because I had, a career potentially at GE. And so I ended up quitting that about 6 months before the Olympics. My boss at GE was not happy about it, but he understood. He got it. And it ended up being the best decision I had made because it was like I quit the job, and the very next tournament, my performance shot up. It was, suddenly I was getting sleep. I was getting to train the right way. And it's like that kind of support makes just a tremendous difference for athletes. I all credit where credit's due because GE gave me the, and I'm super grateful for it. But again, it's very hard to do a 60, 70 hour a week job on top of actually trying to be a professional athlete. And so, like I said, the second I quit, within a few weeks, my performance shot up. So it was, at the time, a lot of people thought I was crazy. They were like, how could you give up this job? Like, this is an amazing job. Don't do it. And what's funny is those same people now are the ones that'll say like, oh yeah, I supported him. That was a great decision. Like, you didn't support me at the time. So definitely the right decision, but it was probably the hardest 3 years of my life. Absolutely.
Wow. When you get up at 30 a.m., 3:30, what time did you go to sleep?
If I was lucky, by 8:30.
8:30. Okay,
Yeah,
still
so
is not that much sleep for a high performance athlete.
right.
And do you think, for example, sometimes that's the only option? You have to work, you have to train also, and ideally, we consider that a high performance athlete has to sleep 8 hours or more, train 2 or 3 times a day. But do you think if you don't have the chance to do that, you can do the better you can with what you have?
Yeah, we all know that person who like, they're 50 years old, and when they say they used to compete, and the first thing they say is like, oh, I would have made it, but it was really political. And it's like there's always an excuse. And so like I do strength and conditioning now for athletes, and one of the things that I always try to institute and like really push on them is that the situation is never perfect. Like, there's not a single athlete in the world, no matter how well funded, that has a perfect situation going on. And it's like, I always tell people, like, look at Cisse, uh, after the 2016 Olympics, like, he trained for the Olympics on dirt. And it's like, he won a gold medal in -80. Like, that's a huge accomplishment. And it's like, if I always point to him, because I'm like, if he can do it, anybody can do it if you're willing to work hard enough. And so, yeah, at the time, my parents just couldn't afford to send me to any tournaments, and USA Taekwondo wasn't giving me any money. And so it just became, okay, I don't have a choice. If I wanted to go to the Olympics, I have to do this. And fortunately, as it got closer to the Olympics, like I said, my parents had the ability to support me the last few months. So definitely the right decision. But like I said, the situation's never perfect, whether it's, you having to work, not getting enough sleep, the tournament doesn't start on time, you don't fight till 2 o'clock in the morning. Like, we all know those problems. And it's like, I think the difference between truly successful people who are consistently successful versus people that are successful once and then fall away are the ones that make the excuse or make no excuses.
Great. That for that qualification, first in the nationals, you fought against Mark Lopez, right?
Right.
Great.
So that was,
yeah.
that was an interesting one, because for the first time in, he moved up in weight, obviously, because Team USA had selected the heavyweight division and the welterweight division, but he didn't want to fight his brother. And so he moved up in weight to try and take the heavyweight spot. And it's probably the first time in my career in years that I was fighting somebody with more experience than me. He was world champion, multiple-time world medalist, Olympic silver medalist. I had reached a point in my career that it was rare for me to fight somebody with more experience in the United States. And so at the time, it ended up, how I thought about it, I had about 4 months to prepare for it, for that match. I needed to only win once. He had to win twice. And I went into it with the mentality that I knew I could, if I was lucky and training went perfectly, I knew I could probably get 1% better, right? Because it's like, at the end of the day, I'm not going to learn a new kick. It's not like I'm finally going to learn a secret technique to score. It's like, no, I might get 1% better. The one thing that I could control and get better, though, was my mentality. And so at the time, that's when I actually ended up doing a 14-day trip to Poland to train with a guy named Wim Hof. They call him the Iceman. And it was all a trip about essentially teaching you to breathe better, teaching you his breathing technique to make you more efficient in whatever you were doing. But on top of it, it was all about essentially pushing your limits and making you realize that you're capable of more than you think you are. And so the physical aspect was absolutely important. Like, I couldn't have not trained that 4 months and won the match. But I think what gave me the edge in that match was the fact that I went and did that training camp just to get a little bit mentally tougher. And so, that tournament, I was probably more nervous than when I competed at the Olympics, because there was just so much on the line, and I was fighting somebody so much more experienced, both record and time-wise. And so, yeah, that was probably the most nerve-wracking competition of my life.
Good, amazing. So you went with Wim Hof before that tournament, which I found amazing, because it's not only the biological benefits of the method, but you say that it also helped you to build up your mental toughness. Can you tell us a little about more about the Wim Hof method and how it works, and how can you benefit from it as a normal person and as a Taekwondo athlete?
Yeah. So the idea behind it is, if I were to make it really, really, really simple, and there's a bunch of science behind it that's much more intensive, but if I were to make it really simple, what I like to tell people is that it's a technique of hyper-oxygenating your blood. Getting more O2 by expelling out carbon. So you're getting rid of carbon, so that way you can get more O2 in your red blood cells. And it's done by, and I should say, for anybody listening to this that decides to try it, obviously if you look into it, Wim's main rules are do it in a safe place. Don't do it when you're driving, stuff like that. Don't do it in water. Very common sense, but I always feel the need to say it. But it's 30 inhales and exhales as big as you can. And then after the 30th breath, you exhale and you hold it for as long as you can. Once you have to breathe, you start the next round, another 30 inhale, exhale, as big as you can, and you do that 3 rounds. That's kind of the entry level of doing it. So it basically kicks your body into overdrive because first of all, you hold your breath far longer than you think you can. My personal record on an exhale is 4.5 minutes. Wow. And the cool part about it is in doing it, once you hit the 2-minute mark on holding your breath, just a massive amount of adrenaline gets dumped into your system because your system is essentially telling you like, hey, you're drowning, you need to breathe. Even though like mentally you're going, no, I'm fine. But your body starts pouring adrenaline into your system basically. And that's what helps you essentially operate at a higher capacity because your body gets that massive amount of adrenaline, and then it helps you deal with things like cold exposure, heat, stuff like that. There's some really interesting, if you go to his website and just Google Iceman Wim Hof, there's a lot of studies coming out of like the Netherlands and places like that, showing that it has some huge benefits for everything from diabetics to, name it. A lot of widespread benefits for the everyday person. Absolutely. That again, they're still researching it. A lot of the time, they're going, okay, yes, there's this benefit, but we're not quite sure what's causing it. So it's still very much cutting edge research right now, but definitely helps everyday people. As far as an athlete is concerned, what I tell people is like, if I can do more work on a single breath than you can, when I can breathe as much as I want, there's no way you can keep up with me because I'll be able to outwork you every single time. And so from an athletic standpoint, the ability to produce more work or have a bigger workload on less oxygen, it's a big way to level the playing field in that you can be competing against somebody that's better than you technically, but again, if you can kick more, longer, faster, harder, and throughout the entire match, like you've got a much better chance at winning a match against somebody who you shouldn't beat. And so it's, as far as the mental toughness, it's like the first day when we were there, we had to jump in they cracked the ice and we had to jump in a river after doing the Wim Hof method. And it was awful. We all ended up getting out before 2 minutes because, we all started shivering and turning blue and beginning stages of hypothermia, right? At 2 minutes is when your body starts to shut down and you start shaking and cognitive capabilities decrease dramatically. And it's like the fifth day we were there, we went every day we jumped in the river at least once. The 5th day when we were there, we had gotten so good at it that like, for example, people were jumping off of a cliff into the lake. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I can't remember the exact number, but we stayed in the river for 43 minutes. And we ended up getting out of the river because we were hungry for lunch. It wasn't even like we needed to get out. And so it's like, that's one of those prime examples of, it's common knowledge that, if you're in a certain temperature of water, at 2 minutes, your body starts to shut down. And it's like, true, I'm sure you can get the water cold enough at some point that, you might have to break up the ice and stuff like that, but there might be a temperature where that stops, but where the Wim Hof method stops working. But Wim Hof, for example, has they did a Discovery Channel documentary on him, and he set a world record for the longest amount of time in a circulating ice bath without his body temperature changing. And it was 1 hour and 52 minutes, if I'm not mistaken. And so, I mean, it defies traditional, conventional medical science. But again, like I said, that's why it's very, it's cutting edge research right now. And so having that advantage going into the Olympic team trials was just, night and day. There was no way he was going to be able to keep up with me.
Wow. And you were preparing for a taekwondo competition, an Olympic level taekwondo competition. Did you go those 14 days to the camp and train some taekwondo, or you forgot about taekwondo for those 14 days?
It was far enough out from the competition that because of the time zone change and everything like that, I did some workouts with Wim, but nothing, no taekwondo. I just said no, I want to be wholly focused on this right now.
Good. And did you told Wim Hof, I'm a taekwondo athlete, I want to use it for this, or you approach it and you take the, oh, this is useful for me, I will use it, or you actually talk with him about it?
So I did talk with him about it. The interesting story is that when I first got there, it's me and a very small group, about 10 other people. When we first got there, we went around the room and basically, told our reason for why we were there. And I was the last one to go, and it was a very eye-opening experience in that every other person there was like, "Oh, I'm dealing with stage 3 cancer. Oh, I'm dealing with this. I'm dealing with that." Very, very, very serious life issues. And then it gets to me, and I'm like, "I want to be better at a sport." And it's like everybody in the room kind of laughed, and I even said it at the time. I was like, "Hey, you guys are here for a much more important reason than I am. I'm just trying to get physically better. You guys are actually trying to get healthy." And Wim was actually really cool about it because I know he trains some UFC fighters too. And he just said like, "Hey, that's not uncommon. We get athletes in here all the time." He goes, "They're on the path." He was like, "I'm here to teach all of you regardless." And so he made me feel very comfortable about the fact that, like I said, everyone else was in there for life and death reasons. I was there just for fun, so to speak. And so, yeah, I told Wim about it. I keep in touch with him every now and then on Twitter and Instagram and everything like that. I'll tag him in posts and stuff. And very, 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 very nice, very genuine guy. Just genuinely wants to help people.
Great, amazing. I had a question right here, and now I'm forgetting it. It's about Dream. Do you use the technique before competition?
Absolutely.
The breathing and all the, okay.
Yeah, I still to this day, I do it before training and I do it before competitions. So.
And have you ever experimented the difference that to say, oh, this training I won't do, I won't use it, and this training yes, to see how I feel?
Yeah, there's one of the things that some of the researchers have talked about is that they say that it's because the need to breathe, like when you're holding your breath, isn't a lack of oxygen, it's carbon dioxide buildup in your system. And so one of the things that they talk about that they speculate is one of the benefits of it is that it's actually getting your body used to a higher percentage of carbon dioxide buildup. And so it's increasing your tolerance to essentially work harder. And so I definitely notice a difference on conditioning days if I don't do it. If I don't do it and then I try to go do my conditioning, it's not a huge difference, but I'd say 10% less.
10% that for elite athletes is it's a lot. Great.
Yeah.
Excellent. You are planning to continue competing?
Yeah. So right now, the two things that I'm doing, I'm competing. Well, hopefully at some point, right? Hopefully compete at some point, and then, like I said, now I do strength and conditioning too. So I train other athletes.
Great, amazing. And you have this remote coaching program, right?
Yeah.
Amazing. I saw on your website this your cat kick protocol.
Yeah.
And you tell us a little about it if people is interested in taking it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll just say first of all, but my specialty for remote coaching, now I call it remote. I'm not the one that coined it, obviously, but the term remote coaching is essentially that you don't have to live anywhere near me for me to coach you. As a matter of fact, I specialize in athletes that don't have training partners or don't have a coach. So people like, for example, one of my athletes lives in Anchorage, Alaska, and he's like, "There's no good gym for me to train at here." And so it's one of those things. That's kind of the athlete that I specialize in. As far as I put together a program called the Killer Cut Kick Protocol. just because it kind of rhymed, or not rhymed, but sounded like it sounded intense and fit together, I guess. The idea behind it was that, particularly in the world of Dado and KPNP and electronic chess guards, so many athletes waste time doing things that aren't going to help them. There's so many really potentially world-class athletes that don't know which part of the chest guard to try and kick, or they do their cut kick, but they're not using the right part of their foot. And so the whole idea and the whole genesis behind it was, it's really simple. It's like 30-ish videos, all with explanations on how to do drills and everything like that. It's basically a chunk of what I do for my remote athletes, just without the actual workouts. So it's for somebody that wanted to look at it and maybe integrate it into what they're already doing. Because again, the idea behind it was I wanted to make something that was so simple to follow that anybody can learn and work towards having a world-class front leg cut kick. Because again, like I said, Dado and KPNP, that's the world we're living in right now.
Right. Can you tell us a common mistake that you see often in the cut kick?
Yeah, absolutely. So I tell people, and it depends on what kind of cut kick you're throwing, obviously, what variation. But the biggest mistake I see is, a couple of things. People don't chamber quick enough. So they're slow on the chamber, which you can have the world's best cut kick, but if you don't get your foot up fast, you're cutting yourself off at the knees. People don't turn their shoulder over completely, so that way their chest guard's facing their opponent a little bit. They're not completely turned over when they start. They don't aim with their heel. Too many people try to hit with their toes, and that sensor's right in the middle of our foot, and it's like, if you aim with your toes, you're literally pulling the sensor away from the chest guard. If you aim with your heel, the odds of getting that sensor on the chest guard are better. And then on top of it, it's like, so many people have poor mechanics on the takeoff. And it's like the takeoff is so important that people have this weird tell of they'll either dip or step together before the cut kick. And it's like, a world-class fighter is going to, you might be able to get away with that at a state championships or a regionals, but you're not going to be able to get away with that at a Grand Prix. A Grand Prix, somebody's going to kick you in the face. And so it's like, that was a very long-winded answer. It was definitely more than one mistake, but it's like that's part of what I try to address with my athletes. Just fixing the very, very important things so that way it gives them a better chance at winning.
Amazing. And I know that, for example, as a coach or as an athlete, you have to be prepared for both KPMP and Daedo for all kind of competitions. But maybe, do you have a personal like for one of the systems?
I've won a bunch of matches on both systems. I've lost a bunch of matches on both systems. And I've had weird things happen on both systems. I would say I probably prefer Dado. That might be a little bit of a controversial opinion because KPNP, I think, might look a little bit more traditional. But I think I've lost more matches on KPNP for weird reasons. Like, for example, I'm completely covered. They hit my arms, and somehow it still scores because of the proximity. And so neither system are perfect. As a matter of fact, neither system is anywhere near perfect. But I would say they're both unfair. But I would say Dado is a little bit more consistently unfair. But it's unfair for both people.
Great. I used to think also that KPMP that was more traditional, but now interviewing athletes, they are telling me that they prefer Daedo because it's more consistent.
Interesting. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. When you started this Wim Hof preparation for the Rio Olympics, did you have another kind of mental preparation? How do you manage your mental preparation?
So as I'm sure you've seen from looking at my website and looking into me, and anybody that follows me on any social media will know. So I'm a Christian. I have a very strong religious faith and belief in Jesus Christ, and it kind of puts things into perspective. What I always tell people is that I'm a big believer in, you can believe whatever you want to believe. I'll believe whatever I want to believe, as long as we respect each other. But what I tell people is that it kind of turns the volume down on how serious Taekwondo is whenever you believe that there's so much more going on in that. First of all, Taekwondo is a game. Like whether it's Taekwondo, whether it's chess, it's all a game. It's all supposed to be for fun. So that helps keep it in perspective. But then on top of it, I'm a big believer that I'm supposed to use my platform and the success that I have to essentially give testimony about the good things that God has done for me. And so, again, I always tell people that I try not to be a hammer about it. I try to be a screwdriver in that I would rather people talk to me about it based on my actions and how I act versus me trying to shove it down someone's throat. Like I always tell people I'm a Christian because I'm so far from perfect. Like I'm so screwed up. I'm so messed up. I do dumb things all the time. But it's like I think there's a common misconception that oh well he's a Christian so he's not allowed to mess up. And it's like no, I'm a Christian because I mess up. I'm a Christian because I need that faith. And so going into the Olympics, going into the Olympic trials and the Olympics, that was the biggest thing, right? Like every time I would get nervous, I would fall back and basically say like, you know, look, God, this is what I want to have happen. This is what I'm working towards. But whatever it is, your will is what's going to be done. And like, whether that's getting destroyed and not even making it to the Olympics, losing my first match at the Olympics, or winning the Olympics, like, hey, he works all things for our good. And it's like, if I truly believe that, which I'm like anybody, I have my doubts, I get worried, like, absolutely. Again, far from perfect, but if I truly can focus on the belief that everything is designed not just for his glory, but for my benefit as one of his children, then it puts into perspective, you know, the Olympics, everything. It's at the end of the day, it's not the most important thing.
Thank you, Stephen. I like a lot your approach. Your faith has always been consistent or has increased with your career?
I've really tried. Like it's one of those things. Like I said, I always tell people I mess up things so often that it's unreal. And it's like I say the wrong thing. I say stupid stuff to people all the time. You know, I'm absolutely just like everybody else. But it's like it's just one of those things. I'm a big believer that I'm saved by grace. Thank God, because again, like I said, I mess things up really bad. And as far as I'm concerned, in exchange, that's my one duty to tell people that, like, hey, you know, it's okay. Come as you are. You don't have to be perfect. Look at me. I'm far from perfect. And it's like, if God can take care of me, it's my duty to share that with other people, for sure.
Great. Thank you. Well, this question, I think it will be answered the same way, because
okay.
being so many variables in a fight or in a competition, you can do your best, but there are still certain things that you don't control.
Yeah.
I guess you deal with the things that you can control the same way, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's definitely all in God's hands. First of all, like, it doesn't matter if God's decided it's going to go a certain way. There's no way you're gonna overturn it by trying harder. But what I tell my athletes too is that focus on what you can control. You can't control the dado. You can't control the referees. You can't control when you fight. You can't control how slippery the ring is. You can literally only control one thing, and that's your effort. And so what I always tell my athletes is, like, I lost my first match at the Olympics, and all the time I have people say, like, oh, like, I bet that hurts. And I go, yeah, first of all, absolutely. It's not fun. I don't like it. I wish it had gone a different way. But what I tell people is, like, I left it out all out on the mat. Like, I gave it 100% of my effort. And it's like, I always tell people, because they think, like, oh, I bet you slept bad that night. And it was like, no, I slept like a baby afterwards. And it was like, because first of all, I had faith that everything was going to work out. But then on top of it, like I said, I gave it everything I got. There's nothing I would have changed. And it's like, if you control your effort, like, it doesn't matter if you never get what you want out of this sport. if you're focused on effort and controlling your performance, Taekwondo can be very fulfilling. And it's like, we all know the person who's retired and come back 12 times because they're just unsatisfied. And it's like, it's because they didn't get that medal that they wanted. And it's like, no, if they would transition their thinking to being effort focused and performance focused, like they could be much more satisfied with their career.
Amazing. I from what I hearing from you is that you are really respectful. Do you work with athletes that don't believe in God or something like that, and how do you approach to them?
Oh, absolutely. So, I mean, one of my best friends is a self-described atheist, and like I said, I'm a big believer that there are two types of men and women of faith. There are hammers and there are screwdrivers, and it's like there are times that you need a hammer. Like you're not going to screw in a nail; you need a hammer. But it's like at the end of the day, a screwdriver is not you need a screwdriver for the screw, so to speak. And so what I always tell people is like, I'll happily talk to anybody, anywhere, anytime about it that wants to talk about it. But at the same time, the best thing that I can do for someone like one of my best friends who's an atheist, the best thing that I can do is try and influence him by the way I behave. You know, obviously try and uphold the things that I'm told to do. Like I said, not perfect, screw things up all the time. But on top of it, it's like whether it's my friend or some of the athletes that I work with that don't share that same faith, you know, try and influence them how I behave. And then on top of it, I pray for them, right? Like it's one of those things. My friend who I've known, he started basically as my mentor in the sport. He was on the senior team right as I came in there, and we grew to be really, really good friends. One of my best friends in the world. I love the guy to death. But it's like you know, he doesn't even know that I pray for him. I pray for him. I pray for him all the time. I pray for him. I pray for his family, everything like that. Because it's like I said, you don't know what God has in store for somebody. And so if anything, the people who aren't believers need our prayers, support, love, everything more than anybody else. Because it's like, you know, I think a lot of Christians and people of faith kind of get this negative connotation attached to them of like, oh, they don't like gay people. And it's like, first of all, that like whether you're an atheist, gay, you know, whatever you're into, I don't even know. At the end of the day, it's like, no, I'm going to pray for you and love you all the same because like I have my own problems. Like, well, you know, I have no business judging you. I'm told I'm not supposed to, and I try really hard not to. Like I said, not perfect. I mess it up, but it's like, you know, whether you're an athlete that I'm working with that is an outright staunch atheist, hates everything about it. Okay, that's fine. That's none of my business. And so it's like, yeah, I absolutely work with people of all sorts of faith. One of the athletes that I work with is a practitioner of Islam. I love him to death. Like, again, it's none of my business. So
Excellent. Thank you, Stephen. Well, let's go on to move again to Taekwondo. During your career, with which athletes did you enjoy fighting most?
Oh, that's a good one. There was an Iran. I only got to fight him once, which really disappointed me because we were just always different spots of the bracket. There was an Iranian player, Tajik Hussein, who was world #1 for a long time. I got to fight him once at the British Open. He had way more experience than me. I managed to pull out a win. Realistically, if we had fought that match 9 more times, I probably would have lost every single time. But because he was just a better player, more experienced. But just I got lucky that day. But that was. I always think about that match because it was very technical and tactical. And those are my favorite kind of matches, not the slugfests. Like, I think out of all the matches that day, I didn't get any bruises from it. You know, it was just very technical and, you know, how I always think Taekwondo should be played.
Good. And is there something you would change of Taekwondo rules now?
Yeah. So one of the biggest complaints is that it's not particularly spectator friendly. Like people don't like to watch it. I think the thresholds on the systems are too high. So, for example, what I always say is that if you want to take away the cut kick and make other kicks more relevant again, if you lighten the threshold to really, really low, who doesn't want to see Aaron Cook fight Korea and the score be 75-73? Like, that's an entertaining match. And it's like, there's the argument that, oh, well, then people wouldn't be kicking as hard. And it's like, first of all, that's not true. At an elite level, people will still kick hard, but it becomes almost a shootout in that who can kick the most and do the most crazy techniques to score the most points the fastest. And it's like, it's not a perfect solution. Like, there's definitely holes in it. I understand that. But it's like, again, everybody would want to watch at the Olympics Bianca fight, and I'm drawing a blank on her name, the girl from China. Everybody wants to see that rematch. And it's like, everybody would want to see that match where it's 75-74 going into the third round. Like, people want to see that fight. And it's like, I think a big solution is just lighten the threshold. Like, you don't have to try and take away cut kick. If you make it to where the other kicks score too, people will throw them.
Interesting. Never heard that idea, but it sounds like. Have you ever tested it with some Hogus or not?
Oh yeah, it's one of those things. I think with a friend of mine, we put it on like male fin weight, and just went to town. And it's like, it still didn't score easy. Like, you know, everything went up that I thought would have gone up, but it was still, I mean, double-digit scores going into the third round kind of a thing. And like I said, anything that encourages athletes to kick more is going to be more spectator-friendly.
Yeah, and I also, speed will be promoted a lot with that system.
Yeah.
Good. During your whole career, did you have a moment when you were taking Taekwondo seriously? Did you have a moment when you wanted to drop out?
So I played football, American football, I should specify, in high school, and it was right after I made a junior team. And I remember without going into the details, basically I wasn't supposed to get the ball, and for whatever reason the ball came to me. I grabbed it. I ran about 15 yards, which is good. Like, that's a good gain on the play. Afterwards, the coach grabbed me by the face mask and screamed at me because I wasn't supposed to get the ball. Now, keep in mind, I did my job. The ball just happened to come to me. It bounced, and literally, it was off of a kick return, literally went straight to me. And so it would have been irresponsible for me not to run. And so that I remember at that point, like, no, I'm going to stick to Taekwondo because, again, I'm getting, and in fairness, I can't blame a bad coach for not, but I can give that coach credit for keeping me in Taekwondo.
Good. Which position did you play in American football?
So I tried a couple on offense. I would say I probably stuck. I would have been better at tight end just with my body type and everything like that. But I really liked playing free safety on defense.
Great. Normally, well, now with the quarantine, it's a question that I do to all of our interviewees. How do you manage your day?
Yeah, that's a good question. So if it's a training day, I get up at 4 because I'm a big believer in getting up and getting things done, because I've pretty much found that if I get up really early, I can get more done before 8 a.m. than most people get done all day, just because nobody's calling me, nobody's trying to get a hold of me. So I'll get up at 4. I'm in the gym for my first workout at 6. I'm done with that session by about 7:30. After that, I eat breakfast. Then I'll do my lift in my gym at home. And then the rest of the day is all geared towards clients. So that's whenever I start doing their programming, having their one-on-one sessions, everything like that. Those are pretty much my Monday, Wednesday, Fridays. Tuesday, Thursdays are a little lighter. I try to keep all my work Monday, Wednesday, Fridays. But Tuesday, Thursdays, much more geared around mobility, recovery, sitting in the sauna, stuff like that. But I'd say the biggest thing during this quarantine has been focusing on learning, just trying to get better at my job. I read all the time. I'm taking the mentality that, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be based on faith, right? And so I'm taking the opportunity to get better at everything that I can, learn as much as I can so I can be effective whenever everything goes back to normal.
And you read about training.
Yeah, a lot about performance in high-level athletes, strength and conditioning, different breathing techniques, a lot of focus on mindfulness in meditation and stuff like that.
Amazing. Could you tell us, can you recommend us 1 to 3 books that most impacted your life recently?
Yeah, and I'll keep it secular. I won't cheat and say the Bible. That's a cop out.
Okay.
A book, probably the number one book that I recommend is called Extreme Ownership by a guy named Jocko Willink. Jocko Willink was a Navy SEAL deployed in Afghanistan for 2 tours. He fought in famous battles like the Battle of Ramadi and stuff like that. And the whole book is about basically what we talked about, that there's no excuses. Like, it's all your fault. And like, that's probably had the biggest influence on my competition career. Another one that I'd recommend is called The Little Book of Talent by a guy named Dan Coyle. And it's like he describes, it's a tiny little book, but it's all about tips and tricks on how to be more efficient at whatever you're doing. Super quick read. You can have it read in an hour and it'll completely change your career. And then, let me see here. What else do I got? I guess if I was going to go for most bang for your buck, I'm trying to think of something that probably wouldn't have been suggested yet. Well, you know what? If I'm going to go most bang for my buck, I'm going to go with Tools of Titans by Tim Ferriss, in that it's 500 pages of short, digestible chapters of the smartest, best people in the world in their fields giving tips on what makes them successful. And it's like, I've stolen a ton of things that have nothing to do with Taekwondo and implemented them in my training that, again, for $20, I mean, we're living in an amazing time that you can reach out to people on the internet and talk to them directly. But on top of it, it's like, there's been no time like this in history that, you know what, I'll learn French. And it's like, jump online and learn it, kind of a thing. And so it's one of those things like, if people aren't reading during this quarantine, they're sincerely missing out. Like, they're going to be behind the curve whenever it stops.
Great, amazing. Do you use this maybe this kind of philosophy of Tim Ferriss, that doing more with less, to apply it to training and to all your day-to-day?
So absolutely, it's funny that you say that. I am a huge believer in the 4-hour work week by Tim Ferriss, in that everything you do should be designed to either be delegated or self-contained. In that, so for example, I always plan my workouts at the start of the week. I know exactly what I'm going to do at every single workout, and I think athlete should. One of the biggest mistakes Taekwondo athletes make is they'll spend 3.5 hours at the gym. And it's like, that's all fine and good if you've got the time, but the older we get, the less time we have. Everybody's got jobs, they have responsibilities. You don't have time for that. And it's like, if I could go back and myself anything, it would be, hey, a 45-minute to an hour extremely focused workout is way more important and way more effective than a 3-hour workout where you work on jump, flying, side kick. It's like, no. Go to the gym, work on cut kick. That's all you've got to do. And it's like, for the people that talk about how they can't score cut kick, and I go, okay, well, how often do you work on cut kick? And they go, I did 3 sets of 10 this week. And it's like, you did 30 cut kicks and you're wondering why it's not world class. Like, oh, I can answer this question for you. So absolutely, Tim Ferriss has actually had a huge impact on my competitive career, because, again, if you can be efficient and get something done in 45 minutes, don't waste your time with 3 hours.
Amazing, great. Yeah. Normally, many athletes, I can say that waste their time, but they could have, for example, if you the ideal conditions, you can do a lot with less. Right. For example, I don't know if he mentioned this, but we travel 2 hours to another city to train better, and then we make the back 2 hours trip. Yeah, that could be a 4 or 5 hours training, much better. most
Yeah,
efficient.
no, you do what you have to, right?
Great. Well, some of these questions are stolen from Tim Ferriss' podcast.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I love it.
I have to agree. What purchase of less than $100 has most positively impacted your life in the last 6 months?
The last 6 months. That's the one. That's the part that gets me. So I purchased. And I'll show you on video. It's called a Sorite. P-S-O-R-I-T-E. It's for you use it essentially on the muscles that connect from your rib cage down to your hip flexors, and in particular, as a kicking athlete, your psoas, that muscle there, can get extremely tight, and it's like that is $65, I think, and I use it literally every day. Up until I started using it, I had chronic back pain, really, really tight hamstrings, and it's like if we look at our body like a chain, if one link is out of order, then the rest of the chain is going to be messed up. And it's like most kicking athletes have extremely tight psoas muscles, and they don't even know it. And it's like they think they have back problems, and it's like, no, you've got a tight psoas. It's very different.
Great, thank you. What you consider you are not good for?
Will you repeat that? I'm sorry.
For what you are not good.
What am I not good at?
Yeah.
I can't sing. I'm a terrible singer.
Great.
Can't sing. Moderate dancer. I can dance if it's pre-planned.
If you could have a gigantic billboard that anybody in the world could see, which message would you put on in?
So I won't take the cop out of something about my faith, because again, I think that's an easy answer, and it would be the first thing that I would do. But if I couldn't do something like that, I would probably have a billboard that just said it's all your fault, and it's like good, bad, it doesn't matter, it's all your fault.
Great. A big responsibility.
Yeah, for sure.
In the last 2 years, what new behavior, habit, or skill has most improved your life?
That's a good one. I would say probably heart rate variability monitoring. It's kind of gotten a little bit more trendy lately in that, like, your iPhone supposedly gives you a decent heart rate variability score, but what I always advise people to do is spend $50 and get a polar heart band, and in the morning have a free heart rate variability app, because the good part about it is it can tell you when you're overtraining, it'll give you a score and a color based on how well you recover each night. And if you have a bad score, theoretically you should either work out easier or not work out at all, depending on what the score and color is. But the biggest tool about it that I love the most is if you're doing it consistently, it gives you a graph so you can see 1 week at a time, a month, 3 months, a year. It can help you predict whenever you're going to get sick. So there have been times where, all of a sudden, for no reason, I wake up in the morning, I feel great, but I have a terrible heart rate variability score. And so in the past, when I've ignored it, a day or two later, I'll get a sinus infection, or I'll be coming down with the flu or something like that. And so it's one of those, that's probably made the biggest difference. And it's 40-year-old scientific technology. So it's not new technology, but nobody uses it. And it's not like it's ever been refuted either. There are critics to it for sure, but there's no gaping hole in why people don't do it. And so heart rate variability is one of the most important things an athlete can do.
Thank you, Stephen. What advice would you give to a 13-year-old starting to compete in Taekwondo?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. I'd touch again on what we talked about earlier in that, hey, if you want to be an Olympic gold medalist, great. Train like you want to be an Olympic gold medalist. And don't get me wrong, I understand you have to still get your black belt, stuff like that. Absolutely. But a jump flying side kick is not going to win world championships for you. A cut kick will. And so, if anything, I would tell a 13-year-old just to be really, really, really focused on the 3 or 4 things they need to do to win a match. And if they just do that, that will be better than 99% of their competition.
Good. What are bad recommendations you hear in the Taekwondo environment, in Taekwondo competition? Something you don't agree with?
So a couple of things. Be light on your feet. I don't know if you've ever heard that, where somebody will be like doing an agility ladder or trying to kick faster, and somebody will say, "Oh, be light on your feet." That defies physics. Like, no, you have to put force into the ground. What they mean is quick contact time. Like, put force into the ground, but move your foot afterwards. And then on top of it, like, I guess I would point it to any number of parents that sit in the stands and yell at their kid whenever they lose. And it's like, that's the absolute worst thing you can do to get your kid better. If anything, support them and ask them what they need to actually accomplish the mission next time.
Excellent. Last 3 questions. What is the best investment you've ever made?
So I quit. In quitting a 6-figure job at GE to pursue the Olympics, I'd say that was probably the biggest investment. Realistically, like I said, it would have been a career. I probably would have moved up the chain. I'd be making great money right now, but it's like I wouldn't have had that experience at the Olympics, and I wouldn't have had the, like you said, investment in myself of like, okay, I know if I really double down, I can actually make something big happen.
Excellent. Something you want to say, but I didn't ask you?
I would just reiterate that if me personally, if I can make it to the Olympics, anyone can. I was a chubby little kid that couldn't sit still, and it's like, not necessarily touching on faith, because I'm obviously I'd love to say, be a person of faith, but that's not necessarily for everybody, and I understand and I appreciate that. But at the end of the day, like, if you work hard and you're just focused on what you need to do and not getting distracted by the other things, like, you can do amazing things.
Amazing. How can people contact you, Stephen?
Pretty much any social media website, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'm at Stephen Lambdin, just my name, StephenLambdin, or they can hit me up at stephenlambdin.com. That's where I usually get a bunch of clients. So a simple Google, I'm not hard to find.
Perfect, Stephen Lambdin. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed the interview. I learned a lot now. I hope our audience too. Thanks so much.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate you having me.